It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we begin a Wednesday. Gary, what's happening?
Oh, man, what a day. Man, I still can't stop laughing over this story. Oh, by the way, good morning, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, we're the niceties and all
we're
that.
We're the station that cares.
Yeah. Don't forget to wear pants.
Else. Yeah. Don't forget. Always wear pants.
Right.
The Live Golf League learned that. They weren't wearing pants. Now they got to wear pants.
Now things have changed.
Yes. Oh, just, no, they weren't wearing Speedos. They were just wearing shorts at their golf tournament. But see, that's the advice you gave a long, long time ago.
Don't forget to wear pants.
Don't forget to wear your pants, Eric. That used to be almost some daily advice that came from you.
That's right.
But when I read this here, I just burst out laughing. I really, there were some headlines yesterday. We'll get to this a little bit later on that I went, this is Babylon Bee. It's not. But when I saw this one, New York Attorney General Leticia James has been hit with a shocking allegation by the Trump administration accusing her of mortgage fraud.
Oh.
In documents obtained by Fox News, the Federal Housing Finance Agency sent a criminal referral to the Department of Justice accusing James of mortgage fraud yesterday. The director, William Pulte, said in a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi that James appears to have falsified records to meet certain lending requirements and receive favorable loan terms.
We've said for a while, if the left is accusing Trump of something, you might want to look at their own behavior. I didn't think that it would be this close.
But Pulte cited, this is really easy to understand.
Yeah.
Pulte cited a property in Virginia that James allegedly claimed as her principal residence, and a property in New York she claimed as a 4-unit structure instead of 5, which he said could mean she was able to get different and more favorable loan.
Oh, man. This is just...
Here's what... Now, of course, the first thing I thought of, all right, is this legit? Or are they just trying to tie her up legally? Is this just revenge, right? The thought goes through your mind.
Yeah.
Is this legit, or is the Trump administration just saying, okay, we're going to go after her?
Right.
Here's Jonathan Turley on Fox News yesterday on this one.
Well, obviously, the irony is perfectly crushing. This is a person who prosecuted Trump for everything short of ripping a label off a mattress. And among the charges that were brought in New York in not just the civil but the criminal case was making false or misleading statements to financial institutions. And one of these sections, Section 1014 of the federal code, is prosecuted. It took me about 60 seconds of a search to find cases that the Department of Justice brought against people who falsely claimed that property was their principal residence in order to get loans. So this is well-tread areas for the Justice Department. As for James, if we apply the Letitia James standard that she created, there'd be little question here. This seems pretty straightforward. What the administration is saying is this was not her principal residence. In fact, as a New York elected official, she had to say that her principal residence was in New York. This was an out-of-state residence. But also, they claim that in some of these forms, she actually states that her father is her husband in order to file as a married couple. So there's a lot of those questions. And as you know, the Supreme Court just stated stated earlier in March in a case called Thompson that they want to see knowing false statements under sections like 1014, not just misleading statements. These are misleading statements. Either it's your principal residence or it's not.
Or it's not.
Either you're married to your father or he's your father. So they can this can satisfy the Thompson standard.
You know, because you think just one thing, right, would be bad.
That's the one that got me.
But if all of these things are accurate and true, and by the way, if they're bringing this, if that this ends up being a big case, I don't know how they don't have the evidence of it. Clearly they do. Then she walked right into it. It's almost as if she wanted this to happen.
See, I didn't retired. This is really interesting because I did not hear about this, and it was on Substack. It just didn't pick up any momentum. Retired New York PD inspector and Fox News contributor Paul Morrow told Fox News Digital he first reported the allegations of James on his Substack almost 10 weeks ago. The documents presented by Sam Antar and the research he has done appear entirely authentic, Morrow said, in which case Attorney General James appears to have engaged in the very sort of fraud in which she alleged in her case against Donald Trump. Let's see now if indeed, as AG James has stated herself, that nobody is above the law. The New York Post reported that the documents show that the property James purchased with her father had both parties listed as husband and wife in 1983 and again in 2000. While this was a long time ago, it raises serious concerns about the validity of Ms. James' representations on mortgage applications.
Wow.
Oh, my gosh. Just greatness.
Yeah, and, you know, as he points out, as an elected official in New York, well, your principal residence has to be in New York. So which is it? I mean, it's all over the place here. This is, but again, when you think about how Letitia James went through and put her case against Trump together, you know, we said, well, my gosh, you're reaching, you're grasping here. And then but it would make sense that these allegations are true. Well, wait a minute. Who would know about grasping, right? Who would know about stretching it out in order to make it something that it's not?
Okay, now the when they talk about the property was purchased, but that's not where is that where the problem? I don't believe that's where the problem is. The problem must be more recently where she used those residents to obtain a loan.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Because I don't think she was in politics in 1983.
No, but Charlie brought that up. And are you referring to her being an elected official in New York?
Yes.
Well, the question is, does she still list that as her primary residence?
Right, exactly. That would be the thing. When they
did she ever change that?
Right, they bought it back then, but it's whether she ever changed it. Whether she used that to get favorable terms or whatever, I don't know. I don't know what the actual loan is that they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't explained in any article that I've read yet.
And in running for office, what did she list as her permanent residence, her primary? And was there a contradiction based on what she listed for a loan purpose or any other purpose versus what she listed for the political purpose of running for office?
Right, but the political purpose may violate, that might be a civil violation, but there's no criminal. The criminal, this is a criminal referral.
I didn't bring it up. Turley brought it up. Yeah,
right.
So
that's what I'm talking about is the criminal referral is what? What specifically, you know, that has to do with, from what we've read here, the criminal referral, that she used the property in order to get favorable loans on it.
Mm-hmm.
So they must have some specific allegations. Because if you simply list it unless you get a benefit out of it, where is the criminality of it would be my question.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll look into that, but that's just fascinating. I just burst out laughing with that one. That was just greatness.
Yeah, that's justice.
No one is above the law.
I guess we're going to find out.
What I found interesting was the Department of Justice in James did not respond to Fox News on the matter. That's really.
I'm assuming she's going to, she's looking into lawyering up. And also finding out what they have and what, where they're going with this.
Let me see. Pulte cited a property in Virginia that James allegedly claimed as her principal residence and property in New York. She claimed as a 4-unit structure instead of 5, which he said could mean she was able to get a different and more favorable loan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is a criminal referral based on that she tried to do it? Or she did it? That would be the question. What is the criminal charge?
Mm-hmm.
Precisely would be the question that I would ask.
Right.
So we'll keep the research going, but man, that was just beautiful.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out soon enough, as this moves forward. I don't expect it to go away anytime soon.
No, I don't. And what a day it was yesterday, Biden giving a speech. Oh, my gosh. You talk about nobody caring, not even nobody cared. The Democrats didn't care. Stephen A. Smith didn't care. The funny thing is the Democrats do something, and the first thing the media goes to now, it seems, is Stephen A. Smith. What do you think about it?
Yeah. You got any thoughts on this? It's clear that Joe Biden and Jill Biden aren't aware that the left activist media has dismissed them. And they've basically outed them. Jake Tapper's already written a book. It's already over. And when did his book come out? A month ago?
Yeah,
he hasn't been out of office. He was only out of office January 20th. And the book came together that fast. So, yeah, I don't think they're aware that the left, the activist media on the left is actually outing them. They're already done. There really is no calling for Joe Biden to do anything. Because they're all having the discussion of, why did we underreport it? How did we, the fake thing, how did we not see it with his cognitive issues? They know. They've known forever. They saw the same thing we saw. We don't believe they're stupid. We believe they're liars. But I don't think Jill Biden and Joe Biden know that nobody cares to hear Joe Biden. Nobody cares. So, until there's some kind of tell-all book, and then you can corner Joe Biden on some questions, which, of course, you don't know what you're going to get from those questions. Nobody really cares to hear anything from him. He's not going to make an impact. What was the story a couple of weeks ago? He's going to be out campaigning actively. He couldn't campaign for him. It was decided he wasn't capable of campaigning for himself.
I just looked for top-selling books in March, top-selling books in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Not on the list.
Yeah. The Jake Tapper book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not in the top 10 year-to-date or March of 2025. Because when did it come out? End of February, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it was pretty fast. It was a pretty fast pivot.
I wonder if it's selling overseas.
Maybe. Maybe it's only selling on
Because
on Amazon or overseas. Or maybe Jake Tapper just has, 200,000 books in his living room.
it looks like all the top-selling books are fiction.
Yeah. Well, parts of that one might be. I mean, I think we need to rethink how we classify them, fiction and nonfiction.
What a day it was yesterday. We've got a ton of stuff to talk about. 866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Cold weather takes a toll on trucks. As warmer weather rolls in, it's time to assess the impact winter has had on your vehicle to help avoid downtime and keep your rig rolling through to next winter. When completing your spring maintenance check, don't overlook your windshield wipers. Extreme temperatures, snow, and ice can tear windshield wipers apart. Check on yours now to prepare for spring showers and avoid squinting through streaks. A general rule of thumb is to replace your wiper blades every 6 months. But if your inspection uncovers streaking, worn rubber, or damaged wiper frames, you may want to purchase a new set sooner.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, I found the specific criminal referral, and it's even better than everything that we just told you.
Yeah.
The Federal Housing Finance Agency director sent the criminal referral to the Department of Justice, alleging that Leticia James had falsified records to get home loans for a property in Virginia that she claimed was her principal residence in 2023 while still serving as a New York State prosecutor. That occurred, this is the best part, that occurred in late August of 2023, weeks before she began her civil fraud trial against the Trump organization over overinflating values of its properties. The letter said Ms. James was the sitting attorney general of New York and is required by law to have her primary residence in the state in New York, even though her mortgage applications list her intent to have the Virginia property listed as her primary home. It appears Ms. James' property and mortgage-related misrepresentations may have continued to her recent 2023 Virginia property purchase in order to secure a lower interest rate and more favorable loan terms. In February of 2001, James also purchased a 5-family dwelling in Brooklyn, but has consistently misrepresented the same property as only having 4 units in both building permit applications and numerous documents and applications. The letter noted he attached several documents that showed James purchased another property with her father as a co-signer, but falsely listed the pair as husband and wife. This is where we saw this before, in 83 and 2000. While it was a long time ago, it raises serious concerns about the validity of Ms. James' representation on mortgage applications.
Well, and the listing of a property as your primary residence in order to get favorable terms, you get if you're getting a residential loan, there's better terms, there's better interest rates than a commercial loan. And so that's the concern there on the legal front.
And the office did respond, her office. Attorney General James has focused every single day on protecting New Yorkers, especially as this administration weaponizes the federal government against the rule of law and the Constitution. She will not be intimidated by bullies, no matter who they are.
Okay.
Right. The spokesperson said the letter, you notice, not saying
nothing
at all
about
the
case.
This is a lie. The letter,
the allegations.
The letter referenced earlier media reports. This is the criminal referral about purportedly falsifying her resident status to get a lower rate in Virginia and misrepresenting her 5-unit residence in Brooklyn. It was first reported by the outlet White Collar Fraud.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app, available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. So, further in the criminal referral, oh my gosh, from the federal housing. Let me make sure I get the correct. The Federal Housing Finance Agency saying the criminal referral to the Department of Justice over Leticia James was, as we pointed out, the letter referenced earlier media reports about purportedly falsifying her resident status to get a lower mortgage rate in Virginia and misrepresenting her 5-unit residence in Brooklyn. Let me just go back to make sure we have everything here to make sure it makes sense in case you just tuned in. The Federal Housing Finance Agency Director, William Pulte, sent the criminal referral to the Justice Department alleging that James had falsified records to get home loans for a property in Virginia that she claimed was her principal residence in 2023 while still serving as New York State prosecutor. That occurred in late August 2023, weeks before James began her civil fraud trial against the Trump Organization for overinflating the values of many of its properties. Ms. James was a sitting attorney general of New York and is required by law to have her primary residence in the state of New York, even though her mortgage applications list her intent to have the Virginia property as her primary home. It appears Ms. James' property and mortgage-related misrepresentations may have continued to her recent 2023 Virginia property purchase in order to secure a lower interest rate and more favorable loan terms. When you get to the specifics of it here, James granted power of attorney to Shamise Hairston, a relative, to sign an August 17, 2023 document authorizing the purchase of the first property, according to legal filings reported by the outlet, which was White Collar Fraud is one of the first that did it, and as you know, this appeared on a Fox Reporter Substack where they talked about this 10 weeks ago. She secured a $218,780 mortgage to do so. Loans secure for the latter property could have reduced her mortgage interest rate by as much as 1% and had lower monthly payments under the Federal Home Affordable Modification Program since it was listed as containing just 4 units. Ms. James, for both properties listed above, appears to have falsified records in order to meet certain lending requirements and receive favorable loan terms. That could amount to criminal charges, including wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, and false statements to a financial institution. The documents included in the criminal referral are quite damning, said George Washington University law professor and Post columnist Jonathan Turley, as we just played earlier, as he was on Fox News. These are misleading statements. Either it's your principal residence or it's not. Either you're married to your father or he's your father. What is this about Democrats wanting to marry relatives? This isn't the first instance of this.
No.
Turley has also described it as perfectly crushing that James would face criminal allegations of a similar nature that she accused Trump and his family of. And if all these criminal allegations are true and accurate, she did it just weeks before she went after Trump for overinflating his assets. This is the person who prosecuted Trump for everything short of ripping a label off a mattress among the and among the charges that were brought in New York in just the civil, but the criminal case was making false and misleading statements to financial institutions. As for James, if we apply the Leticia James standard that she created, there'd be little question. This seems pretty straightforward. Wow. This is really interesting. The criminal referral for James dropping the same day her office confirmed it was preliminary scrutinizing whether insider trading was in play regarding the 90-day pause President Trump put on reciprocal tariffs last week. Wow. Just amazing.
Well, we've seen this before where, again, it's if the left accuses the right of doing something, then you have to take a look at what the left is doing. But this takes this to a whole new level, because the question would be in 2023, did she lie on an application about her primary residence because she's a elected official in New York, where in that case, her primary residence should be in New York. That's where the allegations come in about lying about your primary residence being outside of New York, because that's where the crime would happen if you lied on an application in order to get more favorable terms. Seriously?
I know.
If it turns out to be the case that that's what she was doing while she's going after Trump for, by the way, if you look at his case, everything was fully disclosed to the point that they said these assessments may not be accurate. They put in their own disclaimer and said all parties should do their own due diligence.
The problem where the feds are going after it is because it appears here that she was using the federal home affordable modification program. That's what it seems from what I get from it, what the criminal referral is, which is why this is a federal issue.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah.
I don't break the law. All right. So one of the things is I just don't break the law. I don't, I'm the guy that one time when I got $60 out of the ATM and I was only, put in 40 and there was a little piece of sticky gum or something holding the two 20s together, brought the extra 20 back to the bank on Monday morning. And simply, it's not mine. But even if I was tempted to commit a crime, I would never do it as a politician. Well, I would be in a different business because everybody now is looking for you to do something wrong. Think about this. Think about if all this is true, the arrogance that it takes to go after someone on a very flimsy case of saying he was trying to inflate his assets. Meanwhile, doesn't matter whether you have give a power of attorney to somebody else. You're still responsible. Mm-hmm. It's your mortgage application. Mm-hmm. If you lie on a mortgage application where you're going through a federal program, that's a completely different ball game than Trump in an appraisal where he says, this is just an appraisal, my appraisal. You do your own due diligence. It's a completely different ballgame and intent and motivation in a crime.
Well, again, if you're putting all this together, she's alleged to be doing the thing that she's accusing Trump of doing while she's going after Trump. Not like years before, but this was 2023.
Just weeks before.
In terms of the trying to get favorable rates. This is, again, the claim based on the information that we have right now. Lying to get more favorable. I don't even know I wouldn't know where to start, because as an investigator, my first question would be to her, what in the hell were you thinking?
Well,
you're one of the, in terms of AGs of a state, there are a few that became nationally known in recent years. Ken Paxton's name has been, in Texas has been, floated around in stories. But Leticia James, because of her case against Trump. And if you put all this together, and again, if it's accurate and true, she's engaging in the very behavior she's accusing him of.
Right. Where there's much
while accusing him of doing it.
While the allegations against her, and Turley was making the case, this just isn't a mistake.
Right.
These are outright lies.
Right.
Either you're
is it your dad or your husband? Which is it?
That may be the quote of the year.
Either you're married to your husband or your father, or he's your father. As Turley put it.
And the residence, that's easy.
Right.
You don't make, you know what your primary residence is, but
because the thing is that the counter is that because the crime would be listing it on a loan, but she has to list her primary residence as New York, so the loan fraud, if it amounts to fraud, happens that, well, wait a minute, you can't have it both ways. Either your primary residence is New York because you're an elected official there, or it's not. And you listed it as not, according to the allegations on this loan, to secure this loan.
Either you're married to your father or he's your father. That may be the best thing Jonathan Turley has ever said.
Well, it's,
I just can't.
I guess it could be both, but not legally. I wouldn't.
But that's really the most damning thing, and that's why Turley said what he said. This is really damning because these aren't just mistakes. It was just misrepresentation. No, it's not.
No.
And then the thing about your father, making your father your husband, shows a premeditation for not telling the truth when it comes to buying properties.
Right. Yeah.
And so that was, just amazing.
Well, and then if that's accurate too, that's the stupidest thing ever. Well, to list anybody as your spouse who's not your spouse.
Yeah, exactly.
These days you can get away with it because, you have your, domestic partner. I don't know how many banks recognize that, by the way. I'm not sure. I've never actually come across, it's been a while since I've done a home loan, but it's, you can, by the way, you can be in a mortgage with somebody else who you're not related to at all. You can co-own a house and not be related. You could also co-own a house with your father.
Yes.
You could both be on the mortgage. But if you're listing as the husband, then is it in another attempt to try and get more favorable terms?
Right. Because you're using his assets as part of getting the loan.
Right. Because in the case of him just being your father, you don't share his assets. There's no community property between you.
Right.
Unless you have a business together or something like that.
It will be fascinating to see where this goes.
Yeah.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Wow. Our immigration laws, Democrats in Congress wanting to go down to El Salvador Just what a hill to want to die on.
They don't get it. It's like November of 24 never happened. Were they out of town on election day? What the hell are you thinking?
And then I saw this headline. Chris Matthews suggests Trump is smart to target Harvard and elite universities. You know, the interesting thing is when he was talking about Harvard's tax exempt, remember Bob Jones University in the early 80s, they lost theirs.
Yeah.
Because they were against interracial marriages.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll get to that and a whole bunch more all coming up. Tons of stuff.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Right over there is Eric Harley. Good morning.
Hi.
Well, Biden reappeared last night. Nobody wanted him to, not even Democrats, but, the usual blah, blah, blah Democrat talking points on Social Security. But then again, he, sort of drifted off into different tangents, as he always does.
And I had never seen hardly any black people in Scranton at the time I was only going in the fourth grade. And I remember seeing the kids going by at the time called colored kids on a bus going by.
Trump put that video out. No comment. Just put the video out. And meanwhile, Stephan A. Smith, who seems to be who the media now goes to when they want an opinion from a Democrat, unless it's AOC and Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Was on News Nation with Chris Cuomo and was asked about Biden's appearance.
What did you think of President Biden making his witness and the message that they are coming for your Social Security?
Waste of time. Fell on deaf ears. I watched about 5 minutes of it. I didn't really have much interest in it because he's no longer the president. When he was the president, there were some things that he did, like opening the borders, which were horrendous and obviously debilitating to this nation. And because of it, that accentuated the point that he needed to go. And once he saw that, the man that once promised to be a transitional president decided that he wanted to stay and ultimately had to be forced out. And so when those kind of things happen, clearly a lot of what you have to say is falling on deaf ears, particularly when all you're doing is regurgitating things that you said in the past, not just when you were president, but when you were a candidate for the presidency before you ultimately won the election.
There you go. He's basically saying what the I believe it was the Bobs said about, what was it, Tom Mikowski when he came in Office Space? And after they were looking at who to fire, and they said, Tom Mikowski, whatever his name was, he's useless.
Well, that's what I don't get about the Biden camp, whoever's still in the Biden camp. I think I think we can count on three people. I'm not sure about Brother James, but I think we can count on, their son. I think we can count on Jill. And while Joe walks in and out of the Biden camp, kind of wonders, technically he's still part of it. I don't know how they don't, between Hunter and Jill, how they don't see how the left activist media has really shut him down. They really are trying to close the book on Joe Biden. And any appearance is meaningless. He wasn't capable of running in 24. His own party kicks him to the curb and sits him down which, by the way, also means, as we all know, he wasn't capable of leading the nation. I didn't, we still haven't gotten all the answers from the auto pen situation. But you look now in the spring, what are we coming up here in a few days? 90 days out. So less than 90 days out, he goes out and makes a speech and then wanders off the topic on that little audio cut you just heard. Not sure what that has to do with Social Security or anything else he was talking about. Of course, it doesn't have to make sense. But this idea that also was floated a couple of weeks ago, he's going to be out campaigning again. But he wasn't campaigning in 2024. He couldn't. He didn't campaign in 2020.
He didn't campaign for himself, and you want him campaigning for you.
Well, they had the cover of COVID in 2020. They hit him in the basement.
Right.
So he hasn't really campaigned. But this idea that he would make an impact for campaigns, well, come on. Kamala Harris, remember the Wisconsin thing? They were like, Wisconsin Democrats were saying, no, thanks, we don't need her help. She was actually, by election day, on the ticket. But right now, it's too soon for either one of them to be out and make any kind of impact. I don't know how in the world the Bidens don't see that. So you have 4 years of calling a lid Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. and him having 4 or 5 day weekends of laying on the beach. And now he wants to go to work? Yeah. No. I don't know what the point is. His insistence on remaining relevant? I don't know. But in terms of any politician being able to ride off into the sunset and really, getting away with it with no demand from anyone, as you said, he's worthless. It's Joe Biden. It's being able to go if there's a time to go sit on the beach for days on end, now's it.
Well, I think he jumped on what the Democrats have been pounding lately, that Doge, and then Doge through President Trump wants to destroy Medicaid. Mm-hmm. When the whole problem with Medicaid, as they've said, is the fact of the working age, so many working age males that aren't earning any income at all. And they're just collecting Medicaid, and it's like, that's not why Medicaid exists. Medicaid doesn't exist for able-bodied, especially working men. Well, they've taken that and said they wish to destroy Medicaid, which isn't the case. They're auditing Medicaid for people that are able-bodied workers who shouldn't be collecting Medicaid. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole different ballgame. When it comes to Social Security, have they even talked about Social Security? Much?
Not really.
I haven't heard and so now the Democrats are on, and they also want to get rid of Social Security. Well, how? What have they said? Well, they wish to privatize it. Has Trump said that?
I haven't heard that from Trump.
I haven't heard it from Trump. And so they're sitting there trying to throw out anything against the wall, as they always do. Just throw it against the wall.
Right.
And then Biden comes out, and that's what I think Stephen A. Smith was saying. He's got no credibility. What he did on the border destroyed any credibility, and what Trump has done with the border shows that he's just a pathological liar. So if there's any credibility that anybody feels of the Democrats coming out and saying that Trump wants to destroy Social Security, Biden coming out and saying it doesn't even help their cause.
Right.
But on the Medicaid thing, they're not talking about getting rid of Medicaid for people who really need it. They're talking about able-bodied people. Well, you explain it that way, and you're going to have, that's another 80-20 issue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they just don't seem to Stephen A. Smith, I believe, understands it. That's what he communicated to me. Look, the guy has no credibility because of what he did on the border.
Right.
And it's obvious now to anybody out there. Every Democrat knows. They knew it back then that Biden was lying about the border. They knew it back then that you didn't need comprehensive immigration reform, as they always talked about. Have you heard any Democrat bring that up lately?
No.
We need comprehensive immigration reform.
No.
Congress has to get involved in this. I am completely useless and hopeless, and I can't do anything to stop it. Well, we found out that he was lying to you.
Right.
Because within a period of a month after Trump took over, border problem solved.
Yep. As Trump said, turns out you didn't need new laws. You just needed a new president.
Right.
Which is true. We already have the laws on the books. We talked about it then. That was the most frustrating part of it. Our hands are tied. Our hands are tied. You broke it and refused to fix it.
Right. You did it. As we said, that was the one thing when you looked at the Biden administration. This wasn't, people compared the Biden administration to Carter. And we went, no, I went, well, I remember the Carter administration well. It's like, well, no, he was just viewed as not capable of solving the problems that existed.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't looking at him. Now, you can make the case with inflation. He may have been responsible for keeping it going longer. But the fact is, inflation did not happen under his watch.
Right.
It was going on before he became president. And so people just viewed him as not being competent. The difference between Jimmy Carter and Obama and Biden is Biden, it wasn't that he couldn't solve the problems. It's that he created the problems. So, of course, he couldn't solve them. Because if Biden said, okay, put these executive orders on and close the border now, everybody would have known it was your fault. But Trump doing it, everybody knows it was his fault. It didn't change. It didn't change anything. And that's what I got out of Stephen A. Smith, which is, I think, actually correct. First thing he brought as well, he, completely screwed up the border. Well, he lied. He screwed up the border. He did it on purpose. He did it to help make your life harder. The Democrats all enabled him on it and said the president couldn't do anything about it. You needed Congress. We all knew it was a lie. We told you it was a lie. Republicans told you it was a lie. Conservatives told you it was a lie. Libertarians told you it was a lie. And we all found out it was a lie.
And remember, they went after Trump years ago for talking about these other countries are sending their worst here, referring to violent gang members. And everybody, look, that's racist. You can't, that's bigotry. And now we see what ICE is doing and deporting violent gang members away from American soil. Something Joe Biden didn't care about.
No.
Communities were suffering. Every town became a border town, thanks in part because the media wasn't going to cover it. The majority of that, sending them to other cities, tactic was happening at the hands of Joe Biden. The media didn't cover it until Governor Greg Abbott started that, and Governor DeSantis also pitched in that regard. That's when the media lost their minds over it, and it became a headline, and we're glad that it did. There were a lot of headlines that showed that every town is a border town. Yeah. It's not just Arizona and Texas that have border towns.
Well, remember, on the Sunday morning news shows with the Colombian Venezuelan gangs in the apartment complex in Colorado.
Yeah.
It was only a couple.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, they only occupied a couple of apartments.
J.D. Vance.
Are you kidding me?
Martha Raddatz. Did you hear what you're saying?
Right.
You're saying that gang members from outside the country came in and took over a couple of apartment complexes, and you're saying, well, it was only a couple of...
Well, they tried to justify their crime by saying, well, the citizens of the U.S. commit a lot more crimes than non-citizens.
I know, exactly.
Are you just stupid? Are you just a moron, a complete moron? That's the excuse? That's your defense? They still don't get it.
Yeah. And
now let's, as Democrats, go to El Salvador. Yeah. All right. Well, how long before, somebody was talking about with China? It was Chef Andrew Gruel saying it won't be long before people have the Chinese flag in their bio description on social media. Well, what about the MS-13 gang signs in their description? They're going out of their way to protect violent criminals and want you to believe that those violent criminals have an inherent right to be here in the U.S.
Well, I mean, that we'll get to the whole thing on that story, but it's really incredible. I think it was Scott Jennings said, well, I've got no problem. Bring them back and then deport them again.
Right, yeah.
Go ahead, bring them back, deport them again.
Right.
Will they do that? Will they put pressure on El Salvador to do that? I believe they're writing this because, number one, they want to see. We've said this before. We said this early on. It's obvious that Trump is attempting to test the courts on everything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That everything, if he goes overboard, it's to test the courts.
Right. He
wants to see, what he can get in presidential authority and what the pushback, will be. And in a lot of cases, I think he wishes to do it. I'll say in some of the cases, so Democrat presidents don't have as much power as they've had in the past.
Right.
He's testing executive power. You can question what his motivations are, but when you look at, you're not politically going to win that argument.
Right.
Because even if he comes back, he's going to be sent right back out of the country again.
Yep.
He's not going to get permanent legal status.
No.
In this country.
No.
There was already a deportation order for him to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get to that coming up. 866-98 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Independents with carrier authority should be mindful that negotiation strength varies as the week progresses. Typically, the highest rates across major segments are paid for loads negotiated on Sundays, and the highest volume of loads for all segments is seen on Mondays. Also, the weekday that tends to be the best for flatbed negotiations, yielding the best rates. Owner-operators tend to have less negotiation strength on Tuesday, which shows the lowest weekday spread between brokers' offered rates and actual paid rates. Broker offers tend to rise by Wednesday as the end of the week is in sight. This day also seems optimal for the 3 o'clock hustle, so-called for its reliance on that afternoon time of day, when brokers are getting nervous, to improve negotiation strength. Stay mindful of this system to maximize your revenue. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You see this Fox News story? White House aides are quietly floating a proposal within the House GOP that would raise taxes on people making more than $1 million to 40%. Two sources familiar with the discussions told Fox News Digital to offset the cost of eliminating tips on overtime pay, tipped wages, and retiree Social Security. Now, I'm trying to be totally non-biased here. I think this is a wonderful idea to tax those millionaires so that Social Security will be tax-free by October 1st.
Yeah, right. Well, the greedy corporate America run, what are the other words? What am I supposed to?
Well, no,
Let me get the Bernie playbook. Hold on.
Can you make the case that I'm the greedy one?
No, you're not. You're just a working man.
Oh, I'm a working man.
You're a working senior.
I'm a working senior.
Who's forced to work far beyond his far beyond his retirement years.
Far beyond those of mortal men.
Having to do what many seniors are doing, working very well into their retirement years.
I do have a question, though. By the way, it says House quietly votes millionaire tax hike proposal in Congress as GOP leaders signal opposition to what the president wants.
Right.
Well, where do we go from here? We'll talk about that coming up next.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. That's right. We know that people tune in at the beginning of the show, and a lot of people, work first shift, but we get tons of letters that they listen to the first hour or so, and then Eric puts them to sleep, when I decide to calm down. And
are you getting letters or emails? I'm getting emails. I don't open any letters that come to the studios.
Since 9/11, it's like
yeah.
You get an envelope, and it's like, I don't trust it.
Yeah. Yeah,
we get a letter in. Eric puts on his mask and gloves, and
no, just put it in the trash.
All right, where was I?
I don't know.
Oh, yes, people listen to the first hour of the show, and then they go to sleep because they got to work in the morning. Then they listen to the rest of the show on the Red Eye Radio apps. That's really cool. And if you wake up early in the morning. And you don't catch the beginning of the show, we know people do the same thing later on in the day, which is what's so great about having the app.
Yeah.
All right, so we were talking about the White House aides are quietly floating a proposal within the House GOP that would raise the tax rate for people making more than $1 million to 40%. Two sources familiar with the discussions told Fox News Digital to offset the cost of eliminating tips on overtime pay, tipped wages, and retirees' Social Security. Sources stressed the discussions were only preliminary, and the plan is one of the many being talked about as congressional Republicans work on advancing President Trump's agenda via the budget reconciliation process. Trump and his White House aides have not yet taken a position on the matter officially, but the idea is being looked at by his aides and staff on Capitol Hill. We told you the other day that Speaker Johnson has publicly opposed the idea of any tax hikes. I'm not a big fan of doing that, he said. I mean, we're the Republican Party, and we're for tax reduction for everyone. One GOP lawmaker asked about the proposal and granted anonymity to speak candidly, said they would be open to supporting it, but preferred a higher starting point than $1 million. He said the reaction was mixed among other House Republicans, but not all House GOP lawmakers are privy to the discussions, and it's not immediately clear how wide the proposal has been circulated. Nevertheless, it signals Republicans are deeply divided about how to go about enacting Trump's tax agenda, which we have said to begin with. I'm going to love to see the final thing that they put together and see whether it can pass. Here's one, though. When they get to the point, Trump's going to have to say one way or another whether he wants it. If Trump is for the tax increases and you have Republicans, conservative Republicans, that are against it, do they become rhinos? Do Republicans become rhinos because they will not raise taxes? Will the Republican Party evolve to that?
Well, it's, again, similar to the questions we've been asking about when it comes to cuts. If you have those conservative Republicans who are saying, no, we want these cuts to be actual cuts and not say we're cutting, but we're actually spending more in the end. And if they're pushed to, if they've been saying, on the continuing resolution, and again, recently they've been told, wait, you can fight your fight later. Well, it has to come to a head, which will be the administration saying we want this. And if it's different than what those conservative Republicans on Capitol Hill want, then where do you go with it? I don't know how you... Well, in reconciliation, I don't know how you reconcile that. Because Chip Roy's got to go home to his district. And if he's told in the end, well, sorry, you can't fight because we need you to vote this way. I don't see that happening with a handful of enough Republicans to make to doom a bill, doom any action in the House.
The problem is that when they talked about Doge, I thought that you would see them come out and say things like, okay, these are the things, for the next, year and a half that are just absolutely ridiculous. And on July 4th, 2026, give their report. But the fact is what has happened is they super hyped up the cuts. And they started making promises like the Doge dividend. Remember that? $5,000 for each. And that we can cut $2 trillion. Then it went to $1 trillion. Now it's by 2026, 100. Did I say trillion? Excuse me. They said, $2 trillion, then $1 trillion. Now we're told it's $150 billion.
Right.
Now the New York Times already, we talked about it. We went, oh, okay, well, you're not going to be getting any $5,000 check with that. And then we find out the $150 billion may not come off the top, may not be what they actually reduce the budget by because of increases in other places. And our point has been with all the hype that you have put into Doge about you can save trillions of dollars. And he said, Elon Musk said it, we're saving $4 billion a day right now. Well, we figured that out, and that's almost $1.5 trillion. And you and I said, well, my God, if you've done that and you haven't taken anything away from anybody, you've solved the budget problem. And then we found out it's not $4 billion a day every day. What it comes up to is roughly $150 billion is what they've saved.
Right.
So that's not a year. That's, that would be that $4 billion a day would be a little over a month. Right? A little over a month would get you to that point. And that's the problem with overhyping things. We saw an example, and when we saw it, we just went, wrong thing. The whole Epstein thing. And by the way, you've got some Republicans getting antsy going, we've got nothing on this. We got nothing. We put in 4 Freedom of Information Act things, especially for the list. We get nothing. What's going on with that? Because that was another big thing. And remember, all the influencers, Republican influencers, not necessarily conservative, holding up the files. Here we've got the Epstein thing. Pooh, nothing happens. You can't do that in politics. You cannot overhype and underdeliver. You underhype and you overdeliver. As, you know why? We got that from our listeners. Here's what they need to do.
Well, JFK assassination, Epstein, all these things that were supposed to be released that were going to basically satisfy the, I guess, need to know in those cases and put some sunshine on it, some daylight on those cases, ended up being nothing. I don't remember anything new coming out in either case.
And so with all this hype about what you're going to save and if the budget goes up, how do you get those conservatives in the Freedom Caucus not to say, we've been patient. We were patient with the continuing resolution. We were patient with the 10-year outlook, the 10-year framework. And now it's time to actually do a budget and do it through reconciliation and we're spending more money than we did last year.
Right.
And if we can't, and the point that's being made is, if we can't do it now, when will we ever do it?
Right.
And I don't see it. If this fails because of the hype behind Doge and everything which was front-loaded in it, because I didn't expect that they were going to hype it as much as they did. I thought this thing was going to be, okay, here it is, and they just blew this up to the point of a couple of weeks into it. My gosh, there's going to be money all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
The money's, here it is, the money, dividends, this, that. They did the same thing on the whole tariff thing, the tariff dividend. It's like they're promising Americans, we're going to give you money back.
Right. Right.
We're going to give you money back, and we're going to be cutting, and we're going to do, and it's like, well, then you better damn do it.
Yeah, it's again, it's going to come to a head before the end of the year. There's no way it's not. Because either the administration takes a turn, which means House leadership has to take that turn. Mike Johnson's been more in lockstep with what's going on with the White House than he is with the conservatives in the House. And I don't know how all that plays out. I don't know how you reconcile all of that. The GOP has a slim majority. You can't afford a handful of them.
By the way, if they say that the White House hasn't taken a position on it, if it's true, the Fox News story, they have taken a position on it.
Right.
Because all they're waiting for is, okay, we're floating. If you float something, all right, how about in order to pay for all of this, we increase taxes on millionaires. If they get the whole Congress to say it, well, are they going to back off on it?
Is that what they're doing in trying to say, look, because you have the House conservatives saying, no, look, $150 billion. We want that off the top. We want that to be a real cut. You can't use that to pay for something else. So the White House floating this idea saying, well, okay, we'll pay for it with this, with a tax increase above $1 million. I don't know.
Well,
because we haven't heard the White House actually float this and talk about it and promote it.
No. But as you said the other day when Mike Johnson said, the rumors, and we said it's more than rumors. There have been stories written on it.
Right.
And the stories have remained consistent. The source stories have remained consistent.
Right.
And the White House isn't denying it.
Right.
And as we've always said, if you want to know what the White House is attempting to promote, where they believe they're completely clear on, you look at True Social or you look at Rapid Response 47.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you know.
Right.
Because if they believe they're right, it's immediately on there. And if they're not sure, it's not immediately on there.
And, how do you get conservatives in the House to vote for a huge tax increase for those over $1 million? I mean,
well, here's the thing. How do you get conservatives to vote? Not just for a tax increase on the whatever would be the top 1% or people over $1 million or whatever the number would be, that they do that, provide those tax cuts, but also have no cuts in the budget, where we actually increase spending. What conservative is going to go for that? Because
then
you've increased taxes and you're still not cutting what's on the budget.
Yeah, because see, that's the thing. Because my question would be, are they trying to, if the conservatives are saying, if we're cutting $150 billion, we're cutting $150 billion, and you can't use that to pay for something else. So the White House or whoever comes up with the $1 million a year tax. But what if they get neither? What if they want to raise taxes and don't cut?
Right.
Oof.
Someone's going to put that equation together, and his name may be Chip Roy.
Well, you can't bring that to the floor. You won't have the votes. Don't bring that one to the floor. It's doomed. It's doomed right now if that were to happen. I'll tell you.
It's going to be fascinating to see where this goes.
It really is. Yeah. I'm very curious.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, so when you look at the whole Doge thing and everything else, and we're all for it. We're just saying that if you promise the American people a ton of stuff, and that you're making these cuts, and first it was $2 trillion you could cut, then $1 trillion, it ends up being $150 billion, and then in the final budget there is no cut. People's taxes remain the same. There is no effect that people feel from all the hype that you have promoted it with. Mm-hmm. You pay for that politically down the road. Mm-hmm. That's our point, and that's the challenge, warning, whatever you want to call it. That just is the political reality when you hype the good of what you're doing, and they're doing a ton of good by pointing it out, but eventually it gets down to, all right, you're doing all this stuff. Show me the conclusion of it.
Yeah, right.
What's the conclusion, and how does it affect me?
Well, there it is. The greatest political comeback in American history. There has been a major payoff in fixing the border.
Absolutely, yeah.
But on the economy, which includes how this all goes down on spending and tax cuts and everything else, there has to be more. It can't be the only thing as big as it is. The border's massive. There has to be more.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome, and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Oh, man. So the entire case of Kilmar Armando Garcia.
Yeah.
The El Salvador citizen living in the United States, came, like in 2011, 2019, got a deportation order. The administration admits there was an administrative error that sent him back to El Salvador and an El Salvador prison. And even though he should be out of the country, the process of sending him to an El Salvador prison was a mistake. Do I have it right?
Right.
Basically,
yes.
That's it. So The Supreme Court comes along and says, number one, that district judges, this isn't what they're supposed to be doing. And number two, said the administration must facilitate the release. And the big question now is, what the hell do they mean by facilitate? What it all depends on what the word facilitate means. You've got this the one judge that's out there stating that you've got to do something. You need to facilitate it. Mm-hmm. You saw this. Stop taking vacations. Mm-hmm. You need to get serious about this. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're in contempt of court. For what?
Right.
What's causing this? What could solve this immediately? The Supreme Court saying, here's what facilitate means.
Yeah.
Because
here's how we believe you can legally do this.
Right. There is no pathway. There is no pathway set by the Supreme Court there's just a word, facilitate. And nobody can figure. Facilitate to the Democrats means come back, go in, get him, bring him back.
When Bukele was talking to the media the other day, he said, well, I can't do that. I can't send somebody from my country across the U.S. border illegally. And I thought to myself, well, there is no jurisdiction that the Supreme Court has over, or any court in the U.S. has over El Salvador.
Right.
So, because the media was trying to ask him in that moment, hey, what are you going to do about it? Well, he was saying, I can't do anything about it. I'm not going to facilitate what would be clearly an illegal move. And so for the administration, the question is, well, what are the orders? What does facilitate mean?
And so what you have here is something to me that's purely political.
Right.
And even the Democrats admit it. Let's go to MSNBC here. All right. And you have Hakeem Jeffries. Okay. Being asked this question. Here we go.
What, if any, power, for people who are watching at home, what power do you have and other Democratic members to compel, push the government to bring him home?
Well, we have the power to shape public sentiment, and at the end of the day, making sure that public sentiment in this case understands that the treatment of Mr. Abrego Garcia.
So there you go. I just wanted to bring it. So we can shape public sentiment, which means this is a political issue for them.
Yeah, right.
And you see it's a political issue. You see how the leftist media is, this Maryland man, making it seem like, and even on CNN, you saw the left trying to make the case, if they can deport him, they can deport any American citizen. It's like, well, no, they can't.
No, they can't.
You can't do that. Now, I know Trump said the other day that if American citizens commit heinous crimes, maybe they should be shipped out, and we're looking at the legalities of that. Well, there's a lot of legalities there between differences between an American citizen and somebody who is in the country illegally and even has a deportation order from 2019. It's a completely different ballgame. So really, until the Supreme Court can define, because what's going to happen is if the administration doesn't do anything, then what are they going to do? Is the judge going to order contempt of court some of these lawyers to jail? And then at that point, it goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's going to have to define what facilitate means, right?
Right.
Because how do you solve that problem? So it becomes a political issue, and the Republicans are saying the Democrats want to bring back an illegal immigrant who we believe is a gang member in MS-13 who had a deportation order to begin with. And fine, if you want to bring him back, okay, if you can find a way to bring him back, we're going to send him right back again because he's in here illegally and there's already a deportation order. So, and then you've got the Democrats trying to make the case that if this can happen, if there isn't full and complete due process here, where in essence with the deportation order shows there's enough due process to kick him out of the country.
Right.
He's in here illegally.
Right.
There's not much else you can say. I mean, that's obvious to the law. They're trying to make the case and fearmonger to American citizens that because this happened, that you as an American citizen can be deported. And that's why they're using the term, this Maryland family man. You've seen that one too, right? This Maryland family man. And it's like, okay.
Right. Yeah. Pam Bondi was on that yesterday. And it's something I was actually talking to some family members over the weekend. I keep calling him a Maryland man. No. But you have to do that to make it seem like what they want. They want the headlines. The left wants the headlines for those who don't pay attention, to look like Trump deported someone who was a U.S. citizen. Somebody who was born and raised in Maryland.
Well, that's what they're attempting to convince the public of. So to me, until the Supreme Court comes out and says, all right, this is what facilitate means.
Right. Tell me what order they're not following. There is no order. Facilitate, there has to be a clarification there. Facilitate how? How would you do that?
John Roberts? Let's get that tax is a fine, and a fine is a tax.
Yeah, penalty is a tax, and a tax is the penalty, and it's all the same thing, yada, yada, yada. Well, it's the equivalent of saying, get her done. Right? What does it mean? You can't, there's nothing for them at that point to comply with. Facilitate how? That's the question.
You know, when you look at it, because the next thing is, okay, what does facilitate means? It means go in and get him. Well, does it legally? Legally, what's the definition of the word? To facilitate means to make something easier.
Right.
If your best friend is very shy, this is actually in the dictionary, you could facilitate her efforts to meet new people. Facilitate comes from a Latin word for easy. It means to make something easier or more likely to happen. What does that?
Yeah.
So and so until the Supreme Court defines what facilitate is, it's almost let's throw a word in there, facilitate, that makes it sound like we're telling them they got to go to get them, but we're not saying that, or we're not really sure what we're saying, and nobody knows what we're saying, and so it just politically works out that way.
Right.
And where you politically have the advantage, the Republicans are, well, yeah, okay, if somebody can, get his release and bring him back, we'll rearrest him and send him back out of the country again.
Right. If we want to go through the motions, okay.
Right. And so here's part of the debate going on CNN with Scott Jennings, okay? Here we go. All right.
It's predicated on something that is not necessarily
They believe every time the Trump administration, every official of the Trump administration that has been in court on this case has attested to the fact that this was an error and it was a mistake. Look, so this, I think you're speaking about their public view of the case.
I'm telling you that their view of it is that
public.
It's an El Salvador citizen who was sent back to El Salvador, who was in the country illegally, who, according to some people in his long process, which does include an existing deportation order, believes that he has an affiliation with MS-13. As I said, there's no version of this man's life where he comes back. And let me say one more thing. The people that want him brought back need to understand something. If the president of El Salvador releases him, and we do facilitate his return, when he lands in this country, one of two things will happen. He will be arrested, and then he'll either be sent back to El Salvador, where he is now, or some other country that I promise you don't want to go to. He's not going to be allowed to come back and live in this country as though he is a U.S. citizen. He is not.
That's it, because so they walked around this, the leftist media, this whole thing about him not being a citizen by calling him a Maryland man. Just Google Maryland man. Fox News did it.
Yeah, they did. Fox News did it. Yep.
It's everybody is using Maryland man.
Yeah.
He's not from Maryland. And
that's done on purpose.
Right.
To send you in the wrong direction.
To shape a narrative and make it seem like something it's not.
And then you have this here from Democratic strategist Julie Roginski here going up against Scott Jennings. Here we go.
If this president and this administration can accuse somebody of being a terrorist, then accuse any one of us of being a terrorist and do with us what they will. There's due process that exists in this country for everybody. And the fact that this man received no due process, was effectively disappeared to a foreign country, a country which he came from, which he was basically got
It's not a
asylum.
foreign country. He lives there.
Excuse me, no, he does not live there.
He's a citizen of El Salvador.
Scott, excuse me, he got asylum in this country.
He's a citizen.
Scott,
does he have asylum?
Excuse me, let me finish.
No, he doesn't.
No, it's not that he, sorry, it's not that he got asylum. He got a judge to say that he could not be.
Does he have
back.
a deportation order?
Excuse me, he could not be. Can you let me finish? He could not be rendered back to El Salvador because he was at risk of being harmed in El Salvador. That is what a federal judge. That is what a federal judge.
By who? No, who was he at risk of?
Excuse me. That was what a federal judge said.
He
could not be deported.
He could
not be. Who could he be at risk by? I don't know. But
a rival gang.
No.
That's another thing that they dance around. Well, there's no proof that he's associated with MS-13. And then at the same time, they say, well, he's at risk in his own country. And as Scott Jennings points out here and asks the very valuable question in this regard, what threats coming from who? He's at risk because of why? Because of threats from rival gangs. It doesn't matter where you start on this. It ends up at the same place every single time. And the left has been trying to talk circles over and over and over again. They're fighting for this guy with gang affiliation to be back in the U.S. because he's a Maryland man. That's BS.
And completely ignoring the deportation order.
Exactly.
Trying to make the case that an American citizen could find themselves in the same place.
Right.
Which, of course, if I'm arrested by ICE, I'm an American citizen and everybody knows it.
Right.
You make that mistake, there's hell to pay.
Right. Exactly.
And if I went through what he went through, Mr. Garcia went through, the immigration judge would immediately throw it out. And there'd be hell to pay because you and I are American citizens and can prove the fact that we're American citizens.
That would have been a blunder beyond blunders. That can't happen. But that's not what happened.
And
the leftist media wants you to believe that's what happened. These are activists. They are fighting hard for this to happen, for him to be back on American soil.
And then if I escaped from ICE after they arrested me as an American citizen and tried to fly somewhere else, I would provide to fly my enhanced license, my enhanced Texas license, my American passport as I pass through TSA, pre-check.
Yeah,
not the same thing is my point.
You know, and keep in mind too that they're also fighting. The left resisted taking other gang members out of the country and deporting them.
Yeah,
he's not the only one. They're trying to make him the face of it because they're falsely calling him a Maryland man.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. So, yeah, the whole thing right now that's being fought about Mr. Garcia and the courts and the Democrats and the Republicans is really now just a political football going back and forth.
Yeah.
Until facilitate is defined by the Supreme Court.
Right.
And again, this judge may do whatever the judge may do and may hold people in contempt, some of the Justice Department lawyers in contempt, and try to throw them in jail. Then that gets appealed right back up to the Supreme Court again.
Yep.
What does it mean, facilitate? What is the exact instructions? What do you want them to do? And they'll either say the court is right or they're wrong. But there is no path. There is no legal path to resolve it, so it all becomes political at this point.
Right.
And even if they facilitate, you must go and get him. How?
Well, and again, is that within the purview? Is that within the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court? You know, now that it's already happened, he's not here. So, again, they have to clarify, facilitate, and also remain within their jurisdiction. I don't see how that happens. Unless there's something I'm missing, I don't see how that happens.
The judge instructed the White House to facilitate Mr. Garcia's return. The Supreme Court agreed.
Yeah.
But the court also specified that the judge's oversight had to be done with due regard for deference owed to the executive branch in conduct of foreign affairs.
Right.
This ambiguity was an invitation to the judge and White House to work things out without making it a constitutional crisis.
Well, work things out isn't, that's, again, and talking about the ambiguity here, no, there has to be very clear precedent based on the Constitution as to what the courts can do and what they're asking the administration to do.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Just reading here from the Wall Street Journal editorial about the situation with Mr. Garcia. The question is, what do the courts do next? The judge held a hearing Tuesday, and by our deadline, she had warned the administration about gamesmanship, but said she wouldn't hold anyone in contempt for now. She also said she will require 2 weeks of intense discovery from justice attorneys. Mr. Garcia is being held under an agreement in which the administration is paying El Salvador $6 million to house migrants this year. Since the Supreme Court has ordered efforts to facilitate his return, the judge may say that continuing to pay El Salvador for his detention could violate that order. The larger problem is that Garcia was deported without due process. The administration first said he was sent to a Salvadorian prison because of an administrative error, but has since suspended the staff attorney, remember, who made that court filing.
Right.
Mr. Garcia was not mistakenly sent to El Salvador. This is a quote now from Stephen Miller. He is an illegal alien from El Salvador, said Stephen Miller. In 2019, he was ordered deported. He has a final removal order from the United States. These are things that no one disputes. Where is he from? El Salvador. Where is he a resident and citizen of? El Salvador. Is he here illegally? Yes. Does he have a deportation order? Yes. But as they point out, that's not the whole story. Mr. Garcia's presence in the U.S. was also subject to an immigration judge's 2019 withholding order, which prevents a migrant from being deported to a particular country, which in his case was El Salvador, because he was at risk of harm from a criminal gang.
Right.
And the reason he's in harm from a criminal gang is because that criminal gang believes he's a member of the other gang.
Exactly.
The Supreme Court's unsigned opinion specifies that the lower court's order properly requires the government to ensure that Mr. Garcia's case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. That means with respect for due process, the immigration judge's order forbade Garcia's deportation to El Salvador, and the administration has not challenged the existence of that order. Now, this is where they give advice. Mr. Trump would be wise to settle all of this by quietly asking the El Salvador president to return Mr. Garcia, who has family in the U.S., but the president may be bloody-minded enough that he wants to show the judiciary who's boss. In this case, does that become a judicial showdown? Mr. Trump may assert his Article 2 powers not to return Mr. Garcia, and the Supreme Court will be reluctant to disagree. But Mr. Trump would be smarter to play the long game. He has many much bigger issues than the fate of one man that will come before the Supreme Court. By taunting the judiciary in this manner, he is inviting a rebuke on cases that carry far greater stakes. I don't think that matters.
I don't think that matters either. I think there is something to the, well, let's see again legally what is binding here. You know, it's not about one man. It's about a case. It's a very critical case because, you know, I would argue, well, he should do, you know, because this thought here, he should do the right thing and pick another battle, right? Choose his battles wisely, kind of thing. Approach here.
Well, just want to make sure I throw this in, or are they saying the Supreme Court will seek revenge on the president if they don't win this?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it. I don't know what the ultimate.
I don't know what they mean.
Problem would be if you're talking politically, you can't win this. He's not going to win it anyway. I mean, with the left, with those going after him, there's not going to be a win. They're already lying about Garcia, his status, his affiliation, how all this went down, calling him repeatedly a Maryland man.
But the interesting thing is what the Wall Street Journal is stating here is that the Supreme Court eventually is going to agree that the president has the authority to do exactly what he did, but he doesn't have the authority to do what he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're having a...
Well, that's
if you... That, to me, is clear. They're trying to say the Supreme Court's going to eventually come out and say, no, President Trump has the authority to do what he did. We cannot challenge his Article 2 authority to do this. But you are.
Yeah, right. And if the president is pushing them basically to that limit, then it is a worthy battle, and he shouldn't bring work with El Salvador to bring him back. This thing is, well, he should just do this and then move on. And no, if the idea is to play this out to its final conclusion, as they recognize here, quite possible the Supreme Court comes back and says, we can't challenge him on that authority. We don't have the authority ourselves to do that. There is really nothing the Supreme Court can do here, and then it's over. Because if he calls El Salvador and says, look, go ahead, send him back, then the leftist activist media wins, and they keep going on every gang member in every town that's ever deported or put in jail. Now, they're going to fight their fight, but so is Trump, as he should.
But what it comes down to is, in court, the reason the court made the decision that he can't be deported to El Salvador is because a rival gang would go after him.
Right.
Which means you're just not a normal citizen. You're just not a Maryland family man. There's a reason that a rival gang wants to go after you.
Right. Something else because is trying to walk around.
Because you're in a gang yourself.
Right.
And so it just is, it is this circular thing that keeps coming around, but the ultimate result at the end is you have a deportation order. Mm-hmm. It already exists.
Mm-hmm.
So if Trump does say in a week, okay, look, make a deal, send him back. We talked, we made a deal, sending him back. As soon as he comes back, he's being arrested and being deported to
Ireland.
To
live with Rosie O'Donnell.
I'm trying to think of being deported to Greenland.
Oh no, that's going to be ours pretty soon. So
okay, that's right.
That.
You're deporting him back to the United States.
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
Okay,
by the way,
Canada.
y'all,
Same thing. Okay.
Yeah, y'all don't tell Greenland yet. They don't know.
But you sent him to the Northwest Territories.
Yeah.
No, and just because the deportation order exists, you bring him back. You already have the due process. Here's my point. Does the due process go away if you don't send him back to El Salvador because it's already been done? The due process is a deportation order, but just not to El Salvador. That's the current ruling that exists.
Right. If you're going to be bound by that judge's ruling from 2019 that he can't be deported to El Salvador, you mean?
Right.
Because he's under threat of retaliation from rival gang members?
Right. That would be the due process.
Well,
the due process, would be, and by the way, and by letting go that lawyer who said it was an administrative mistake and having Stephen Miller out there saying, no, here's why we deported him, still doesn't hit the El Salvador.
Right.
The El Salvador order from the one immigration judge. It does. That becomes an issue, doesn't it? But if you take him back and you follow that judge's order, unless this new judge has the ultimate say if Garcia comes back, whether Garcia can stay or not, the judge doesn't have that authority, as far as I know, to do that.
Right.
And if it comes down to it, if you bring him back and then you arrest him and you go to deport him again, it goes back up to the Supreme Court again.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Supreme, at that point, if you're going to deport him, the original deportation order, you've got everything legally behind you at that point.
Right.
But politically, this is, to me, an impossible one for Democrats to win.
Well, and I think the administration looks at it like, okay, if we get Garcia back on American soil, then the courts have jurisdiction again in a case where we don't believe they do as of right now, with him being in El Salvador.
Right.
Because
right.
They're going to have to, the court's going to have to exercise that, on a clarification, basically, to say, this is where we have jurisdiction. We can force you to do this. And I don't think there's anything there. I don't think they can do that. I don't think they have that authority.
Well, they said to facilitate, that means now he's an El Salvador citizen in an El Salvador prison.
Right.
If El Salvador wishes to return him, facilitate means we supply the plane.
Right.
To bring him back if they let him go. But then we rearrest him and we send him back out of the country again because he has a deportation order against him. How weird.
Well,
the Democrats are arguing, you have no proof he's a gang member. Well, the judge says he can't go back to El Salvador, his home country, because rival gangs, what's a rival gang? It means you're in a gang and there's a rival gang.
Right.
There is no rival gang if you're not in a gang.
Exactly. And then they scream, oh, there's no proof he's got gang affiliation. And then they cite the court's order from 2019. Which is it? They keep walking back in circles and it all ends up to the very same place. He is where he should be. Period. And he has no inherent right to be here in the U.S. None.
Yeah. So, when the Wall Street Journal said, well, because they're paying $6 million, the judge could say, well, you need to rescind that $6 million. Well, why? The others, no, you would just rescind the money you're paying to house him in a prison.
Right.
Not the whole
You'd
$6
boil
million.
that cost down to the cost of, for him, whatever that is, however you want to divide that.
But why hasn't she stated that now?
Right. I don't know.
They're all saying you need to do something, but we can't tell you what to do.
Right.
But if you don't do something and we haven't given you any idea what to do, then you may be held in contempt of court.
Probably because if you're talking about the money aspect of it, then in El Salvador, they could say, okay, we don't need the U.S. money. We're still going to keep them. So you really have no effect either way. Bukele made it clear the other day. He doesn't have any intent on sending the guy back here, for sure.
Well, if they offered him a couple $1 million, he might.
Right, $6 million for the one guy.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning. So, until somebody clarifies what facilitate means, because nobody has told the administration what they have to do, except facilitate. And as we've said, facilitate means make easier, make something easier. Well, that's not a court order. There's nothing specific in there. It isn't you need to pay $1 million or you need to do this. Order comes from a court, or you need to stop. You don't have the authority to forgive student loans, Mr. Biden, and you need to stop and stop now. Those are pretty easy orders. This thing is all over the place.
Right. Yeah. It's and that's what I think the administration is looking at. You see a pretty strong front from just about everybody in every position on this in the Trump administration saying, we didn't do anything wrong. Everything's by the book. So basically putting the ball back in the court's hands. You're going to have to clarify here and flex whatever jurisdiction, which we believe you don't have, in order to make this happen.
Well, and the specific question that I would ask if I was a judge is, or the question that I would have would be, the judge said, the immigration judge, you can't go back to El Salvador. That was in there. Mm-hmm. You did that. How are you not in violation?
Right.
That's the only question. Mm-hmm. It's not the deportation.
Right.
It's simply
it's the withholding order from the court from 2019.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the only question.
Yep. And I haven't seen anyone answer that or make that case yet.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. I'm looking at this editorial. It's the Wall Street Journal. Witkoff walks it back on Iran. Mm-hmm. The presidential envoy corrects a comment suggesting that a nuclear deal would let Iran enrich uranium. Now, you know how I first got a hold of this story when I woke up yesterday? Was our colleague Mark Levin going crazy over that statement.
That's funny.
I mean, a good crazy. I mean, he's just very passionate about it. It said President Trump has put Steve Witkoff in charge of diplomacy with Russia, Ukraine, Gaza, and Iran. and that may be more than a one-man de facto State Department can handle. This week, Mr. Witkoff made a mistake on Iran that he had to walk back later on in the day. Mr. Witkoff, a longtime presidential pal, emerged from his first round of indirect talks with Iran enthusiastic about a deal on its nuclear program. He suggested on Fox News on Monday that Iran didn't need to enrich uranium more than 3.7%. Well, that isn't Mr. Trump's position. It was Obama's position in 2015. President Trump has said Iran must verifiably dismantle its nuclear program. Mr. Obama let Iran retain its enrichment capacity. The 3.7% level sounds low, but it's 2/3 of the way to enriching fuel for weapons grade. And when that came out yesterday, I mean, not only Mark, but I think a lot of people looked at it and myself and said, whoa, 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 that's not your position. You know, are you backing off on it? And this following, again, Trump having to reverse himself on Ukraine, because the other day over the weekend he said, you know, Ukraine started the war again. And then yesterday he said, you know, Russia clearly started the war. And it's like, you've had to go back and forth on that twice now. Don't do that.
Right.
Golly, don't do that. And here, so when I saw that and then the Witkoff thing, I was like going, what? Come on, be consistent. And again, Witkoff, walked it back and said, no. It's my position is Trump's position.
Yeah. Right.
So it said if Iran won't give up enrichment, it's a signal that the mullahs don't really want to abandon their nuclear ambitions. At the very least, it's a blunder for Mr. Witkoff to offer concessions to the Iranians when two sides barely have begun talks. On Tuesday, Mr. Witkoff seemed to clarify his Fox comments, writing on X that any final arrangement was set the framework for peace, stability, prosperity in the Middle East, meaning that Iran must stop and eliminate its nuclear enrichment and weaponization program. That's the right policy. Axios reports Mr. Trump held a White House meeting on Tuesday on Iran talks with his senior advisors. We don't know if Mr. Witkoff's X post was a result of that meeting, but we hope so. Yeah, because that was like, whoa, no. And I didn't, we knew that wasn't Trump's position. So the question is, Witkoff saying that, the right hand's got to be promoting what the left hand is doing, or the subordinates have to be supporting what the president is saying.
Right.
And on Iran, the president has been consistent.
And I don't know how you don't have the talking points, right? I mean, that one has me scratching my head.
Hypothetically, if you were president and on Iran, you believe that, no, it has to be dismantled, and your surrogate was out there saying something different that actually is what, as they point out, what Obama wanted to do.
Right.
I have a feeling you and I would be a little bit angry at that subordinate.
Yeah, there'd be a problem, a major problem. Look, we still have questions on Iran. How the director of national intelligence said...
God, I was just going to bring that up.
How
2 weeks ago.
How in the world does she get to the point of saying we have no evidence of Iran building their nuke game?
Right. Or that the president or the Ayatollah of Iran has, since 2004,
right,
has shown no interest in redoing their nuclear program. You and I, that it's like, and did you notice? I've not seen her since.
No.
I've not seen Tulsi Gabbard anywhere. But when she said that, it was like, what the hell are you talking about?
Well, on Iran, how is it that anyone is off point?
Yeah.
I think it's the entire, picture here. You know where this is. Everybody knows what Iran is doing. Everybody knows what they want to do.
Well, the interesting thing is when Tulsi Gabbard said that, we went, the president's never said that.
No.
You know what? Where's this coming from? Where are these people coming up with these things? It's like he never said that.
No.
And then it was just a day or two later where he was talking about what a threat Iran is.
Yeah.
And it's like, did you pay attention to your national security director from the other day?
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
I've said this before. And in business, the thing that happens so much in business is that people can't communicate effectively.
Right.
In so much. And I mean, in humankind, not just, by the way, if you're saying, why did you stay away from mankind, Gary? Was that something like,
Justin Trudeau?
Jake Tapper did no, I said human.
Yeah. We say Hugh Person.
Hugh Person. That guy's so stupid.
Remember that? Of all of mankind, we say person kind. Yeah, you're not going to be prime minister long.
That happened. Yeah, and that happened just the other day with someone else being interviewed.
Mm-hmm,
where that was said.
Yeah.
Mankind, person kind,
the person kind.
Well, you have son in person, so that's male oriented. Let's take this thing. Let's take this thing to its insane conclusion.
Yeah, but purse comes first. Seriously, I'm getting a migraine.
My head hurts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just yawned. I just realized I'm yawning on the air. Yeah, but I have not left. I've not got a cup of coffee. I haven't got water. I haven't got any of my snack. I haven't moved in 3 hours and 15 minutes.
You've been down the hall. Why didn't you go get any of that while you were down there?
That was early. That was before midnight.
No, you went down the hall during a break earlier.
No, I haven't been down the hall yet. No, I haven't.
I was out there when you were there. We were talking, remember? Yeah, that was today.
Are you? No. When the only time I went down the hall was when I heard voices, and that was before 12 o'clock. There was somebody down in the TM studios actually recording, and I heard. So that's the only time I've left the studio today.
So me, you, and Alan weren't out there in the hall talking about the studio.
Yeah, that was before the show began.
No, it wasn't. Alan agrees it wasn't. No, it was during the show. I know it's all a blur, but it was during the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. Was it 15 minutes into the show?
No.
So I opened the door and stepped up, but I didn't walk down the hall because we were right outside this door.
Yeah, I don't know where you went.
I didn't go anywhere. I didn't go anywhere.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, calm down.
This is the thing we're going to disagree upon.
Yeah.
All right. What else do we got? Any tariff report for today? Things have been quiet on the tariff front, haven't they, for the last couple days?
Actually, I think that's by design.
Yeah.
The only thing you're hearing is from Vice President Vance talking about the UK thing, thinking that, he said he's pretty sure, he's confident there's going to be a deal with the UK. And then trying to think who else was out there. It was a day before yesterday that was talking about something. But I think it's by design. I think it is about, all right, let's get this out of the news cycle, quit talking about it, get whatever deals done we're going to get, and go from there. Oh, the president, he mentioned something. I forget what it was. It was when Bukele from El Salvador was here. He mentioned something on tariffs. But it wasn't a big, he wasn't making policy. So.
Yeah, futures are down today. I guess retail sales data is supposed to be in today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and coming up, in about, 2 weeks from today. We'll get first quarter GDP numbers.
And what did the China president say? What did Xi say? Something about the American peasants or something?
Yeah.
You saw that one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a war of words until any kind of deal is done. I think that's what the market is looking for, really, is a deal with China. But Xi's going to play the cold game here because he has more political room to do that. And so I don't know where that's going to end or when that's going to end, if anything's going to change.
Here it is. China last week condemned Vice President J.D. Vance for referring to its population as peasants and now has used the same word to describe Americans. The China's foreign ministry condemned Vance for remarks he made to Fox News in which he said, "We borrow money from Chinese peasants to buy things those Chinese peasants manufacture." Now Reuters reports that a top Chinese official is using the word too. Let those peasants in the United States wail in front of 5,000 years of Chinese civilization, said Xia, the long director of China's Hong Kong Affairs Office under the State Council, according to Reuters. The two leading economies are trading bars with each other after imposing triple-digit tariffs against each other. So China, this is the news I saw yesterday. China reportedly took another step to decouple from the U.S. by ordering its airlines not to accept any more Boeing jet deliveries.
Yeah.
Financial markets, meanwhile, are acting as though there's some likelihood of a U.S.-China deal. I think they're just looking for optimism. What's the Chinese deal going to be with the United States? They talk about the deals, but nobody talks about what the goal of the deals is anymore. We don't hear what the goal of a deal is anymore.
Right. I don't think there is any clarification from the administration, and that leaves the markets with a big question mark. I don't think anybody knows. I don't think anybody's even trying to guess on that one. It wouldn't be wise to do it because I don't know where it ends. NASDAQ futures down 2.3% right now. That's huge. Wow. That's a big deal.
If nothing happens, for example, it's been up and down a little bit here or there the last couple of days, and that's because I don't think there's been a lot of rhetoric going back or forth or new tariffs being thrown out. The last thing we heard was again that some of the tariffs, the triple-digit tariffs on electronics and things like that, weren't going to happen, and then we're told it's being put in another category, but we don't know how much that other category is. So if there is no listing of that other category at the moment, it's zero. Or, 20%?
Right.
The overall 20%. So is the administration thinking, all right, let's just do nothing for a while? Because when you do nothing for a while, you're going to get uncertainty. You're not going to get capital investment. When does that start turning negative if you hear nothing for a week?
Right. Yeah.
Where does it go? Well, everything will be related to what the economic numbers are. And so, but it's been pretty quiet.
Yeah, it has. It really has been.
The last couple of days, so we'll see what happens. And nothing. Have you heard anything about Canada?
No.
I haven't heard a thing.
No, I think all the focus really is on China.
Yeah.
I don't know if the expectation is that things with Canada and Mexico will be worked out and there's not as much worry. Or it's just that everybody's focused on the larger, chunk of tariffs, which is those against China and the retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. by China. Because that's the big, right there, that's the big impact I think everybody's looking at. I think there's some confidence that the thing with Canada and Mexico eventually is going to be worked out, but we'll see. You have the OEMs that are right now scrambling, dealerships that don't know where this is going to go. How do you price it? How do you price it long term? How do you advertise?
Well, you saw that exports to the U.S. skyrocketed in March from China.
Yeah.
As everybody's trying to, and I saw the first tariff ad on the TV before I came into work. I just remembered that. And it was from a furniture place. We've loaded up. We have as much inventory as you want right now. And they actually called it before tariff special. It's like, whoa. 866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. Once a roadside inspection is completed, the officer will close it out, which involves the officer writing or typing up the report. The more the officer found during the inspection, the longer this will take. If violations were discovered, most officers, as a courtesy, will explain the violations to the driver. If there were any out-of-service violations, the officer will normally explain what must be done to get the out-of-service order lifted. Drivers need to be very attentive during this part of the inspection. The driver also needs to read and understand the complete inspection report. After receiving the inspection report, the driver has 24 hours to get the roadside inspection report to the motor carrier. If the driver will not be returning to a company facility within the next 24 hours, the driver needs to know to get it on the way to you via email, mail, or fax within 24 hours. This tip was brought to you by JJ Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Coming up following the bottom of the hour, we just got tons of audio cuts still to play. Man, what a busy day. And one where Chris Matthews says Trump is smart to target Harvard and elite universities. So he's done. Well, another thing. This was, I think Fox News had the headline. With the story that the Trump administration is floating the idea in Congress, seeing what response they get to increase taxes on millionaires in order to pay for what they want in the reconciliation budget. And so I'd asked the question earlier, if that's the case, if Trump wants to raise taxes and Chip Roy says no, is Chip Roy a rhino for not wanting to raise taxes?
Right.
Is that where we're going? And the other point that was brought up is, will Democrats, if the president agrees to raise taxes on millionaires, will Democrats say, no, we need to lower taxes for everyone?
Well, that's what I wondered where they would go. But if, we're talking like the top rate going from currently 37 to 40, keep in mind it was Trump and Republicans that lowered it from 39.6 to 37. So, will Democrats be on board?
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. All right, let's go through some audio cuts. You ready?
All right.
Here we go. This is Chris Matthews on MSNBC. All right?
Okay.
Your thoughts on Harvard's decision not to cave?
Well, I have to say that the administration sometimes sets its targets in the right direction. The elite universities of this country are not exactly covered in roses right now in the way that they handle these demonstrations. I think everybody, whether you're a Jewish student or not, I think you want to have a right to go to a class when you're paying $90,000 a year in tuition. You have a right to go to the class and be taught by your professors and to enjoy the rights of a better university, a good university. And the fact that they had to be told to do this, they had to be told to let students go to school which is what this is about. If they had to be told to do that, they had a problem in their own heads. So I think the elite universities are taking a beating right now. It's probably a smart move. It may not be nice, but it's one of those areas where people are rooting for this guy Garcia because they think he might be an innocent man being thrown into a prison in a foreign country. But the fact is, in this case, it's Trump going after the elites. He knows what he's doing. Politically, it's not going to hurt him. I think these universities have enough money to cover their legacies. They got a lot of money to handle it, so they're going to be able to take care of themselves. I don't want to be loose about this, but I think Trump targeting these universities is probably not the worst move he ever made.
He's off MSNBC.
Yeah, I guess that's over.
By the way, innocence or guilt has nothing to do with Garcia.
Yeah, no.
Nothing.
No.
It's like you don't have to be a convicted illegal immigrant gang member to be deported from the United States. So
right.
he got that wrong, but we've already covered that earlier in minutia detail earlier on the show. But you know, one of the incredible things is if you take what the elite universities did and, you know, you put it into context of the discrimination of blacks in this country, you know, you think about the anti-Semitism rot that the elite universities have and how on every single corner they're still attempting to defend it until again, the federal government came after them. They weren't going to change. They were not going to change. And it's absolute. It's Jewish hatred. And I don't care whether the discrimination and hatred and racism is against anybody, whether it's Jews, blacks, Asians, the Irish. I had to throw myself in as a victim. I don't care. It's all wrong. It's all absolutely reprehensible. And no federal dollars should go to anybody unless we're sure they're doing the right thing over a period of time. They have to prove themselves in order to do it. And one of the things I was even reading, because the Wall Street Journal had some great editorials, had some I disagreed with today, where they talked about the fact, but the federal government is saying that they have to have more diversification. How do you do that? I don't know. But as a higher when you have almost 100% of faculty that is insane liberal, there needs to be something done about it.
Yeah.
And insane liberal means the rot and stink and the hatred of Jews in our elite universities. And then the whole DEI thing. We know that there are companies, there are institutions, federal dollars, that the Trump administration is looking and saying, are they really doing it? Or are they just changing the name? We know that, right? We've seen that already.
Well, we warned when everyone was calling for all these, you know, this person at that university or this, you know, whoever the faculty is or president is at these universities needs to stand down. It doesn't get rid of the culture.
Right.
It's deeply embedded, ingrained in these schools. And the behavior won't change. In fact, I think you're more inclined to get, as a response, even greater activism at that level. And what have they been hell-bent on? They're fighting for their right to be bigots.
Yep.
To discriminate.
I mean, you think about it when you put it all together, the absolute discrimination of DEI, which is, again, we judge all white people a certain way, and therefore society must be set up as if white people are systemically racist, that they're culturally racist to the point that it might as well be genetics. That's where their racism comes from, which, of course, is absolutely ridiculous. Then the hatred of Jews, the anti-Semitism, the absolute filthy hatred that exists out there. And then you've got the radical transgender movement, the absolute misogyny, the hatred of women, and the bullying and the intimidation of women that happened in the Ivy League. By the way, a lot of these were Ivy League women swimmers. And they were threatened. They were bullied. Well, I'm sorry. You've got 3 strikes there. And it isn't good enough just to say, oh, okay, we're going to change in order to get the money.
Right. We're going to call it something else.
Right.
The behavior doesn't change.
Nope. Federal dollars just have no business being in any type of institution like that. No matter what good they do. You cannot do it. We would not justify it if the KKK had infiltrated all universities and they were getting federal dollars.
Right.
We would not put up with it. Where's the one thing that I wanted to play? Here it is. This is a lawyer for a Jewish group out there talking about Harvard. President talked about the tax-exempt status of Harvard. And then everybody went nuts. You can't take away the tax-exempt status. Mark Goldfader here comment. He's a senior partner for Goldfager, Schlager, and Beck, and he also works with anti-Semitism groups. Here we go.
The sense of entitlement here is disgusting. First of all, absolutely clear. The U.S. Supreme Court has already held that a charitable organization, including specifically a university, can lose its tax-exempt status if they are violating fundamental policy. That was Bob Jones University versus the U.S. in 1983. They lost their tax-exempt status because their racist discriminatory policies were contrary to a compelling governmental interest and to public policy. Harvard has said they will not comply with what the federal government says they need to as it relates to enforcing non-discrimination policies. Of course, they can lose their federal exempt tax status. I've read through the letter that the task force sent to Harvard, and all they're asking is to come up with solutions to its own problems. What's Harvard's plan to fix it? It's not a huge ask. The reality here is that elite universities are undermining confidence in the entire sector. Jewish being harassed and assaulted, and elite university administrators have done nothing to stop it, including at Harvard. By the way, in the fair admissions case, Harvard came out with a statement a day later saying they were going to try to find ways around it so as not to comply with it.
Mark Goldfader, CEO of the National Jewish Advocacy Center. So there you go. And Bob Jones University banned interracial marriage on their campus.
Yeah.
They were against that. So the Supreme Court said, sorry, you lose federal funding because of it. But it's almost as if, well, it's only anti-Semitism, and it's only, the racism, in the discrimination DEI.
Well, and the gang members were only in 2 apartments. I mean, it was,
it's only the misogyny of women, and it's the hatred of women, the hatred of Jews, the hatred of whites.
Who was it that said it's not affecting my family? I mean, it's on the transgender issue, it's not affecting my daughter.
Right.
It's probably not affecting your daughter. You probably don't even know anybody that's being directly affected.
That's sort of what gets me the most is if, after October 7th and the insanity of the riots and the Jewish hatred that we saw on all these campuses, it's almost as because we know if it was against blacks, we would all be outraged, including the left. But here, as conservatives, we have outrage towards, any type of racism. We don't care where it comes from. We're against it. We don't judge people by groups. We judge people as individuals. You have the Democratic Party. You have the media that buys into the identity politics that they judge a person by a particular group that the liberals want to put them in and not as individuals. We disagree with that. We believe in the autonomy of each and every human. The spirit of autonomy is what we believe in. You judge a person, again, by their character, and because we do talk radio, by the substance of their argument. And that's it. I don't care about your skin color. I don't care about your eye color. I don't care about your hair color. I don't care whether you're a woman. I don't care whether you're Jewish. I will judge you by what you say and how you behave. That's how we do it here. And if you don't believe it, well, you're a Neanderthal racist. That's what you are. And that's what we're dealing with on these campuses, and I don't buy it. Racists do not change overnight. Racists do not change. You know, when you say, well, if you don't do this right, we're going to pull your money from you. All right, let's pretend we're not. We know it. We saw the Democratic Party before 2006 was always trying to pretend that they were in the middle.
Yeah, right.
You and I always say 2006 because that's when we noticed the change back in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And we went, oh, wow, here they go. They're starting to tell us what they really believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it seems like, well, it's just anti-Semitism. It's just DEI. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Who could be against that? Mark Cuban says.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll stop the DEI.
I mean, the KKK had it all wrong. It should have been kindness, knowledge.
Mm-hmm. In kindergarten. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of another K. I'm trying to think of another K word. Let's call it the KKK, but knowledge, kindness,
and caring. We're bad at spelling.
Knowledge.
And kites. We'll go fly one. We'll put them up in the sky for children. We'll do it for the children. You know, but this is actually that absurd point. Doing it for the children. We'll do it for the children. That's where the left has been for the longest time.
Knowledge, kindness, and kittens.
Why do we want to bring cats in?
We are the KKK. I mean, it's like, say whatever you want. It's what you believe. I don't care about the label you throw at yourself. Antifa was supposed to be, and you and I go way, way back because we used to call Antifa Antifa because anti-fascist is what they tried to be. You couldn't find a bigger bunch of fascists in the world.
Right. And
we all know that the anti-racism movement was a racism movement. So we don't care what you label yourself as. It's what you actually say, what you believe, and how you behave.
Well, even on Capitol Hill, Democrats, it's always the opposite. Affordable Care Act. Inflation Reduction Act.
Right.
It's part of their game.
Yeah. It's the George Costanza, the opposite.
Right. Over and over again.
Whatever you believe, just say the opposite.
Say you're the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. 866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you for being here. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Why? Because our show ends in an hour. After our show is done, a lot of people only catch a portion of the show. Well, after the show's over, the show that we've recorded becomes our podcast, and you can listen to it on our Red Eye Radio app. And if you can't listen to one of our great radio stations while we're on the air for some reason, we stream all 5 hours live on our Red Eye Radio app. There you go.
And thank you for listening.
Yep. Coming up, the White House going after state climate change laws, the chocolate industry.
Yeah.
And what's happening because of the tariffs there. And United Airlines gives 2 profit outlooks, calling the economy impossible to predict in 2025. Oh.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.